Hello everybody and welcome to the West Ham My YouTube channel. It's Corey and of course it is the predicted 11 and score prediction video for West Ham United versus Doncaster Rovers. It's the fourth round of the FA Cup. The winner of this goes against either Manchester United or Liverpool in the next round. So obviously there's a lot riding on this one. It's going to be an interesting one, to be fair, from a West Ham perspective. We've obviously got, I think it's 6 fixtures in 14 days. It's a lot of pressure on this squad and we know with the squad depth it is going to be a tough ask on them. I don't think Moyes is obviously with the lack of options going to change it drastically. I think he'll bring in a couple of the fringe players to freshen things up, possibly look to bring in some of the more first teamers in there if we're struggling against Doncaster come the second half. Doncaster, from what I've seen, are an incredibly progressive side. I think it's easy to look at these League One teams and suggest that maybe they're not good on the ball, and the football's come a long way, particularly in the EPL. And for Doncaster, I like the way they play. The use of inverted fullbacks as well, creating overloads. They've got an incredibly talented number 10 in their side on loan. So Darren Moore's really got a tune out of them. They're looking really, really impressive. And I think they're going to cause us some issues, if I'm honest, if we're not switched on and possibly even with the personnel to come in. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one. Let's get on to the predicted 11 for Doncaster Rovers. In goal will be Balcom. He is newly joined on loan from Brentford. I don't know too much about this man. He has come in for the past couple of games. I suspect that he'll come into this fixture as well. Obviously, as you see from the picture, an England international at youth level. Obviously, I don't know the background as to why you would bring in a goalkeeper like this, but at the end of the day, I can't really speak too much about him. I wish I could. I really, really wish I could. But yeah, you'd have to go with obviously the Brentford scouting system, the fact that they know their talent, the fact they bring them through as well. He is somebody that is possibly highly coveted, and this is quite a characteristic of the Darren Moore side, particularly at the moment. He's brought in a couple of youngsters on loan with potential talent, and you can see that possibly League One is below their level, but certainly it's going to add to their promotion push and definitely push them up the table. So listen, West Ham, there is a weak area in Doncaster's defence, particularly from dealing with second balls at set pieces and deliveries. It's something that we can look to put him under a bit of pressure and possibly use a bit of width in this game on transition to hurt him and get balls into the box. So again, like I always say, it's up to West Ham to test the keeper, to create overloads and get some clear-cut chances, because obviously, of course, that is massively important in trying to get one over on teams, particularly in League One or the Championship. So coming on to this man, Halliday, really, really impressive. A lot of energy from this man. Again, what you'll see from the back four tactically is they'll create quite a narrow system. Darren Moore won't ask the fullbacks to go and press the man. So it means that West Ham could have a lot of space in wide areas. But again, he's asking a lot of both of his midfield in terms of sitting and pressing, equally of his wingers in terms of dealing with that width as well. So Halliday has a bit of a reprieve in a defensive shape. In an offensive shape, he's allowed to create an inverted run. This is an incredibly unique type of tactic for a League One team to use. It sounds a bit derogatory, but I never expected someone to use this. And you're seeing now Man City using that type of tactic to create overloads and extra men in midfield and keep possession. Obviously, the press that Darren Moore could put on this West Ham side is something that could pin us back at times. And I'm not saying that in terms of quality levels, West Ham can't deal with it, but in terms of athleticism, could put us under a bit of pressure. We'll look to make those inverted runs, get in the box, keep the press on, and look to create deliveries and introduce the midfield. There won't be too much width in an attacking sense. In fact, that'll actually be provided either from the winger or possibly even the striker coming out to that side. So he has been accounted for. He does want to introduce a lot of his players into this side. Naturally, of course, it leaves them a little bit vulnerable in transition. It does, of course, mean that the two centre-backs are really exposed and West Ham need pace on the counter. I'm not sure whether we'll get it in this game because of the personnel that may come in, but it is a tactic that West Ham could use, possibly introduce the fullbacks to exploit that space if we win the ball in our third and progress with it. Now, I have slightly mixed it up. I'm sorry. Let's start with this man first and foremost. Anderson, big, strong presence. Moore is asking them to be a more progressive side. He's asking the centre-backs to split, particularly from possession of the goalkeeper. And possibly you look at the goalkeeper decision, maybe they've brought him in because he is good with the ball at his feet. Anderson is a physical presence, is strong. Someone that West Ham, depending on who we play up front, is going to be tough to beat in terms of aerial duels, unless, of course, Mikel Antonio's in there. You look at him, though, possibly pace will get him, possibly the structure of that defence playing out from the back, particularly if West Ham play a 4-2-3-1, pushing those attacking midfielders high, winning the ball in high areas, and really utilising and exploiting the fact that the two centre-backs are very much isolated in that instance. But again, not bad. I haven't, again, not seen too much from him. The key thing to take from this Doncaster Rovers defence is their ability to deal with deliveries and set pieces and second balls and breakdowns in the box. If West Ham, for example, introduce a Thomas Souček who thrives on those additional runs and getting into space, I'm not convinced they can deal with it. And listen, there is a lot of protection for these two centre-backs, particularly if Doncaster can get back in that defensive shape. They're asking a lot of their two pivots in both the press that they'll put on when they've got possession and they're trying to push on the other team, in terms of when they're sitting. They allow the centre-backs and the entire back four to sit incredibly deep in front of the goalkeeper. It is, to that end, Darren Moore is asking a lot of his side in order to be both defensively solid and create chances. And I guess there is a kind of athleticism that's required with that. But listen, nonetheless, I think with a bit of mobility and pace behind, definitely with a press and committing numbers, there's no reason why West Ham can't exploit these Doncaster centre-backs. The next one is Andy Butler. I put him as left-back. I concede, again, it is an apology. He will come on that left-hand side slightly. Again, very, very similar to Thomason. Big, strong presence. There is that level of physicality. Clearly, from what I can tell, there is that lack of mobility. And again, Darren Moore is looking to protect them in terms of using the defensive pivots, in terms of using the wide men at times to push and stop that width from the opposition team. It's giving them less responsibilities to do in a defensive shape. What I will say about this Doncaster side, if West Ham have the ball and they have possession and they're looking to press, they will sit in an incredibly low block. Probably one of the lowest blocks I've seen, but almost literally 5-6 yards just beyond the goalkeeper. And I guess it's about limiting that responsibility, supporting his team and supporting the goalkeeper, and making it hard for teams to break them down. And it's up to West Ham not to allow them to have the ball, but when they have the ball, go in and win it, pressing, winning and committing numbers forward, because we will be too much for them. And possibly if we're pressing in those final third areas and we win the ball in high areas of the pitch, again, there isn't that much space to transition to. And it is going to make it quite tough for that Doncaster team to get back, defend, and prevent them from getting a clear-cut opportunity. And in lieu of any type of pace, if we don't have pace up front, if Antonio doesn't start for whatever reason and he needs a rest, it does actually benefit West Ham having players that aren't having to cover a certain amount of ground and have space to run into. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Definitely something I'm interested to see how West Ham deal with that. It could be frustrating at times. I've got absolutely no doubt it won't be. But yeah, I'd like West Ham to try and put them under pressure, and I think the midfield will have in the attacking sense. It's bread and butter to them in terms of that press. Left back is Cameron John. Again, he's not centre back, of course. I've got the centre back and the left back mixed up, but give me some credit. He's, of course, an EPL team that I don't often watch. He'll press forward, athletic, good with the ball. Again, makes the same inverted run that Halliday will do. Tries to create progressive overloads in the box and possibly even deliveries and introduce that midfield and to hurt West Ham. I will get into the West Ham side and possibly how we can try and contend with this and how we might have to contend with this in a defensive shape. But just the fact that Moore is willing to progress his fullbacks in inverted positions does create those difficult overloads, allows him to keep the press on as well, and introduce the striker and possibly create opportunities and little gaps in the box to try and force West Ham out of place. And you always say with a back four without protection, that is risky. Obviously, West Ham with a double pivot in there are very much they're well matched up against a side that plays a very, very similar formation, but will slightly adapt their tactics. So again, expect him to get forward, good with the ball. Expect him to try and push West Ham out of position and get beyond Fredericks on that right-hand side. But again, Fredericks, we've spoken about his recovery pace. I'm not too sure about him defensively, but recovery pace could be enough in this game. Again, he still have to be disciplined, but I think he'll get that from whoever's playing in those two defensive midfield positions. Onto the midfield for Doncaster Rovers. Like I said, two defensive pivots in there. You'll have Ben Whiteman, really the number 8, the captain. He's been coveted, actually. I think it's by Sheffield United. So obviously there are teams in higher divisions looking at him. Very good with the ball. Like I've said, there is a level of athleticism associated with these two players in that defensive role. They'll push forward, they'll create the press. They've got good distribution as well. Both of them have got good shots from range. He's a multifaceted player. I think in a way, you can't, as a team, you kind of want to. You can sit back against a side that can press you so much, but you can't afford to give people like Whiteman or Smith too much space because of their ability to pick a pass and possibly loft the ball into the box and catch that back four out of position with additional runners, as I've said, equally to have a shot on the edge of the area. This guy has got goals from midfield, despite being in a defensive midfield position. He's got the athleticism to get him beyond, and he has got an eye for goal. So again, West Ham can't really afford for him to have too much space. You'd hope that Rice or Souček or possibly Noble as well, in that defensive position are going to have to go and press, win the ball, break it down and hit him on transition. Again, I'm not convinced Nobes can do that given his athleticism, but Declan Rice, if he does play, and I think West Ham, having only really 3 senior midfielders, will able to win that ball, break it, and really exploit the space that they'll vacate in the midfield. And they'll do that. They have to do that. It's part of their style. I can't see this side playing any different when they're in possession. Getting to this man, Matthew Smith, who will line up on the left-hand side of that defensive midfield position. But like I've said, he will progress very much forward as Ben Whiteman will. Very, very similar role in this side, trying to look for spaces in beyond that you have the attacking midfielder, the number 10, and both the striker. Trying to get into those positions. They'll have a split as well between both the number 10 and the striker to create almost a forward 2. Matt Smith is the guy to try and find that space. He'll sit on the edge of the opposition box at times, trying to find passes and trying to loft them in behind. And again, very much similar to Whiteman, he will leave space in behind. If West Ham can beat that press, it's going to be very, very difficult for Doncaster to get back. And if West Ham have pace on that transition, of course, you're going to exploit the 2 centre-backs that are left very much weak by this. But that is the style that Darren Moore wants to play. He's looking to keep that press on teams. But again, these two are both decent players as well. And there is a lot asked of them. You know, when you see them in a defensive shape, of course they will sit just in front of that back 4. But how deep this Doncaster midfield and defence, particularly defensive midfielders and the back 4, will sit against West Ham when we've got the ball, will give us opportunities to get shots off at the edge of the box, will make it difficult, depending on whoever the number 9 is, to get in behind and find space. We've seen us become frustrated in recent weeks by the inability to get in behind at times. I kind of look at this game and feel like a Saib Benrahma, Emmanuel Lanzini, a player that possibly has got a good shot from distance, is required to get something. And again, like I said, set pieces and deliveries if West Ham commit enough forward. But certainly a tough task, just tactically. And technically, they're quite sound players as well. So West Ham know what they need to do in this game. We'll have to be patient at times as well to get those shots off and hopefully get something. And I think if we get the first goal in this game, it will make it easier for us. They'll have to come and press us. We can win the ball in transition and then hopefully hit them on the counter and wrap this game up early. Because for the life of me, I don't want another shaky one. Even with the Stockport one, it was a little bit too much for me. Let's get into the attacking midfield 3. There's a player in here that is incredibly impressive and will probably feature at a high level very, very shortly. Let's start with this man, Taylor. Taylor on the right-hand side. Interesting how they play both the attacking midfielders, almost at times playing them like wingers. Depending on the side that they'll attack down, they'll use that left-sided or that right-sided attacking midfielder to create width alongside the fullback, who will slightly come inside to create the inverted run and then allow the midfield to be introduced. But equally, it'll allow whoever's on the opposite side in that attacking midfield position to create an overload in the box. Again, it allows numbers to be committed forward. Again, it allows them to have a successful press and a chance creation. This man himself, he scored a number of goals from within the box, particularly from deliveries and breakdowns in play. He will find space. I think this is the point that even if technically a Doncaster side wasn't capable of, getting off successful shots from distance and hurting West Ham, just the way that they play and who they'll commit into the box, particularly with Taylor and possibly even a Reece James, not the Chelsea one, to find that space. And equally, they've got that ability to play wide, use their pace and stretch the game. And I think that tactic of stretching it from one side to the other, forcing a back 4 out of position and then committing those men in midfield is how someone like a Doncaster could possibly thrive in this game. Of course, it naturally depends on, can Doncaster get in beyond the West Ham back 4? We're particularly resolute. The way we use our attacking midfielders in a defensive shape as well is the key here. And if West Ham can keep that discipline and prevent them from getting in behind, I can't see Doncaster getting too much space. But if they do get the space, expect one of the attacking midfielders in either Taylor or James to find space in that box and utilise it and even get off a scrappy shot. And I think that's the thing. There's not too much pressure on the striker. In fact, they're quite flexible. There's a level of fluidity with the striker that they use, and you'll see the man that I'll speak about can play on the left, he can play up front, he can stretch the play, and there is no concern because Doncaster will commit men forward and they're confident in creating chances. Start with this man before I get into their talisman. For me, he's a talisman. I know he's only on loan, but certainly a really impressive player. Reece James, incredibly similar. You'll see him try to stretch the play if it's on his side. He'll have the support and the press from the fullback on the left-hand side in Cameron John. Good player, and I think interesting. He's got the number 3, so I'm not convinced he was ever brought in to be a natural attacking midfielder. But certainly, I think the width that he can create, the fact that he can find space in the box, the fact that he can also offer that option as well. From the opposite side, if it comes in from the right, to get him beyond and cut back and find someone that's progressing, possibly one of the 2 midfielders or the number 10, is again a way that Darren Moore is going to possibly look to break West Ham down. You look at the left hand side, I think the fact that you've got a fullback, the left side attacking midfielder, the inverted right, there are so many things that West Ham need to contend with defensively, and you'd be looking at whoever's playing on that right side, if it is Mark Noble, to try and win that breakdown in play. My concern is the athleticism that someone like a Reece James will offer in trying to get him behind, and if he isn't caught for whatever reason, and Fredericks is pushed out of position to go and try and deal with that inverted run, they can create those overloads. And I think West Ham therefore have to be efficient in winning the ball in those areas, because you can't afford to make a mistake and allow Doncaster to get in behind. Because then you're asking questions of both, if it's Dawson, if it's Balbuena, if it's Ogbonna, positionally and in terms of shape. And West Ham will not, particularly with the pivot, sit as deep as Doncaster. And I think that's what Doncaster thrive on, the idea that they can sit as deep as they want, and then they can attack and throw men forward. And it's an interesting tactic. I can see why it works. I can see why it breaks teams down. You see with Stockport as well, they play quite a progressive style of play. I mean, it is about press and it is about pushing men forward and maintaining that. Of course, they'll be exposed naturally. But like I say, look, Reece James has got ability in behind. We'll try and stretch that West Ham back four. They will naturally need protection. And I would like somebody like a Noble to deal with that. And again, it could ask questions. Like I've said, the inverted run, does the pivot pick it up or does the right back pick it up? And those are the sort of questions that Doncaster are looking to ask West Ham and looking for them to pick up. So I'll definitely keep my eye on him. This man, and honestly, genuinely, incredibly impressed with him. For me, other than the number 9 that I'll speak about, is their best player, is Taylor Richards. Unbelievable talent. I believe he was in the Manchester City Youth Academy, was signed by Brighton, and has recently joined Doncaster. And honestly, the athleticism, he can run from deep, he can shield the ball, he's got a fantastic strike from distance. There was also a passage of play for Doncaster where he's picked the ball up in a deep area and he's had the number 9 going and making a run in behind. Even when Doncaster didn't commit that man forward, he was able to find that pass. And I think that is the difference in this side. That is the genuine quality. And like I've said, if you commit the inverted right back and left back forward, you've got the number 10 as well in there. There's 3 people, possibly even 5 when you commit the 2 pivots to West Ham. And we've only got 2 defensive midfielders only. And I think in a defensive position, this is where the issue comes. How are we going to track these men that are trying to get in beyond? And equally, how do you account for somebody that plays in a number 10 role that's given the fluidity? What's so interesting as well about the way that he's employed within this side, probably more so than the other 2 attacking midfielders, is the fact that he will create an auxiliary press in terms of when West Ham have got the ball. He will look to press alongside the number 9, but equally as well, he will look to create another run alongside the number 9, either from deep or in beyond. And I think we look at a side that's a 4-2-3-1, and we never think that a lot of pressure is put on that lone striker. In this system, that just isn't the case. He's the man that can make that run as well. He's got good finishing. He's someone that West Ham need to look out for. And again, I know there is a drop in quality between obviously League One and the Premier League, and given how well West Ham are performing. But you look at the possible people that will bring in, if they're not match sharp, if they're not concentrated, this is a type of game that could possibly set an upset. They played against Blackburn Rovers. They won 1-0. Taylor Richards scored the goal. There are no surprises here. So again, I think West Ham positioning are going to really have to be switched on at times. And I'm not really confident when you can commit 5 men on a team in a press against 2, essentially in the back 4. So I think there'll be a lot of questions asked of the attacking midfielders, not only to press, but to sit deep and try and win those balls and do things that I am not sure the majority of our attacking midfielders would do, particularly the ones that could play. And I think Fornals, if he comes in, is the man to do it, but he's used to dealing in terms of wide areas and wide positions. But he's going to have to seriously support Declan Rice on that left-hand side if you've got an inverted run, if you've got the winger pulling out, if you've got overloads in the box. So I think if Doncaster can get enough of the ball at times, and they will, of course, naturally there'll be spells, then I think West Ham, there's a possibility that they could find space and get in behind, given that also we're the Premier League side, we'll look to press up. We're not going to sit as deep as Doncaster are in that defensive shape. and we'll look to impose ourselves, particularly if we've got possession. So it's going to be a really, really interesting battle. I'm intrigued to see how West Ham deal with it, and particularly this man Taylor Richards, because I think he's that link. He's that guy that could possibly find the space. And I'm bigging him up. Obviously, I don't want him to score at all, but he's someone we have to keep an eye out for. So keep an eye out. I believe it's for the number 17. Now, this man, I'm going to read my notes. I don't normally have them, but I will for this man. It is Okena Breha. I think that's how I've said it. He's comes from London. I looked in his background, and there was nothing that suggested. I genuinely believed he was a player that had come from a higher club in a Premier League or a Championship. Not at all. I think he's played for Dagenham and Redbridge in the lower leagues, and he's obviously found his way to Doncaster Rovers. He's a very, very good player. Again, he's not Premier League quality for me, but just in the terms of the way that he plays, there is a similarity to Mikel Antonio. His movement in behind is incredibly good. His directness is in his pace from deep. The fact that he can also play up front with another man in that auxiliary run from Taylor Richards, but equally his pace and his directness. He can also try and stretch the play if needed, and if he is deployed in terms of that left-sided attacking midfielder, that could be something that Darren Moore looks to do and create overloads. But I think he'll play this man up front in the number 9 role. His positioning in the box is incredibly good. He does tend to find space. He's willing to work off knock-ons in beyond. I think this is the man, if they are going to score in this game, he's the guy that's going to score. I think if West Ham switch off and press too high, even without an overload from a Doncaster team and an aggressive press, he's the one that can do it. I even think that if Doncaster want to employ the low block that they've shown, he's the man that can be the outball. And I think it's tough, isn't it? I just like the way they've done it. I like the way they've pushed Taylor Richards up alongside him. They can make an effective press. They can try and win the ball up in high areas. It means that they're using him effectively in that final third for opposition teams. And even if he sits deep against West Ham, I think he's their outlet. He's the guy with the natural pace that is willing to run from deep and push Doncaster up the pitch. And listen, they will commit bodies forward if they can get that ball into the West Ham half. So keep an eye out for him. Again, like I said, positioning. What's interesting, and on a final note on the Doncaster side, I know I'm bigging them up massively. I do think West Ham can get the job done tomorrow, but it's the fact that when you look at a lone striker, you think, is it too much work for him? And I think West Ham, even when we played Mikel Antonio, I think first couple of games of Project Restart, he was completely isolated. All of a sudden, you play a wing-back system and you introduce either Fornals or Bowen beside him. And that means that lone striker can thrive and also play those versatile roles in stretching the play and playing from deep. Exactly the same with this man, the fact that they can commit bodies forward, get men in the box, introduce the midfield, try and create deliveries from inverted runs. He thrives off that. And there's no surprise to me why he's scoring goals in this league. And it is, of course, the way he plays, and it is, of course, the way the team plays. For me, him and Taylor Richards will make the step up at some point. I'm not sure when they'll make it, but definitely they are the talisman. They are the quality players. And there's a lot of decent players in this side, but for me, those are the two that stand out. So I think whoever plays in that centre-back position is going to have to be really wary of that, not only in the fact that he might force them out of the position, but he can also benefit from a knock-on or a flick-on or that vision that Taylor Richards has got. And I think that's the thing that West Ham have to be cautious of if we try and play almost like a mid-block or a high line. Done that. Done the Doncaster Rovers predicted 11. They are a good side. Listen, all the best to them after this game. I think for West Ham, in terms of before I get into the predicted 11, to really do well against them, I think, again, defensive discipline is a huge thing of that. Athleticism in breaking from the transitions, possibly taking risks with the fullback and progressing a little bit further and trying to exploit the space, because I'm not sure our attacking midfielders have the natural pace, particularly from deep areas, if they're putting on the press West Ham, that we can carry that ball far enough. Again, I'm not sure if we're going to play Mikel Antonio or whether we're going to look to possibly play either a Yarmolenko or even a Jared Bowen in the 9 role. Again, if Yarmo plays there, the transition isn't going to work. And, I know he had a good 10 minutes period, and he obviously got the assist for Mikel Antonio against West Brom. But again, these are the concerns just from what I gather. And I think ultimately, if West Ham can get the press, there are options for Doncaster to go and break it. But equally, they will sit incredibly deep. And then it becomes a question of how West Ham going to break down this side. And we're going to have quality from the edge of the box that we haven't really seen this season. Now, granted, Premier League teams don't sit nearly 5-6 yards in front of the goalkeeper in a very, very narrow shape, even the likes of Burnley or West Brom. So, this is a completely different type of proposition. And I think if West Ham have got enough quality in those attacking midfield areas, and I'm talking about that glimpse of quality that we could need to nick this game, then of course we'll come away with the win. And like I said, delivery, set pieces. I think as the game grows and goes on, I think West Ham will commit bodies forward. Possibly introduce Souček, possibly an Aaron Creswell comes on for the deliveries. And I think we will get something from the breakdown in that if Mikel Antonio comes on as well. So I think there are options for us to win this game. It's just the fact that there's a personnel change that concerns me slightly and that possibly gives Doncaster a couple of avenues. Let's start with the West Ham predicted 11. Darren Randolph in goal. Yeah, again, look, I mean, there are slight concerns occasionally in terms of his handling, and I've said that before. Possibly could be a concern in this game. I don't think I've seen enough from Doncaster to suggest it's going to be an aerial battle. A lot of their attacking play is from open play, is from trying to drag the ball back and create bodies in the box and deal with the second ball. So I guess Darren Randolph isn't going to be put under that intense amount of pressure that a Stockport team would put him under. So I guess that benefits him. I do rate Darren Randolph shot stopping, actually, to be fair to him. Not too sure about positioning from the near post, but again, I think if West Ham are resolute and deal with the breakdowns and deal with the runs in behind effectively and narrow the space in the box and are very, very astute in terms of the positioning of the centre-backs, then I think we can protect him enough for there to be no issue. I am overcomplicating it. I think Darren Randolph will be fine. Famous last words. But I would give Fabi a bit of a... Not that he needs a rest, but I'd just give Darren Randolph a run out, to be fair, if this is a second string side. Right back, I would go Ryan Fredericks. I think that I like Ryan Fredericks, obviously, for his recovery pace. I think technically as a defender, I'm not sure he's good enough, and he's definitely not what Soufal has shown should be, almost in a very, very competent Premier League right back. Equally offensively, I'm not massively convinced in terms of that final delivery, but I think his pace in a game like this could be absolutely vital from an offensive point of view. I think it could also be crucial as well, given the fact, I've spoken about Doncaster's overloads in the box. His recovery pace could get him out of a lot of holes, particularly positionally, particularly if he's not protected enough from someone like Mark Noble, who possibly goes out to press, gets beat, and there are bodies in and around the box and outside the West Ham back four. So again, I think those are caveats to that. I would like to see Ryan Fredericks in this game win the ball and progress with it. And for all the criticisms that I could sit here and have of him, his pace is absolutely blistering. And I would 100% use it in this game. Like I said, the two centre-backs will be exploited. They will not have protection either from the two pivots or from the full-backs either, even given the inverted runs. I think possibly the use of an inverted run, particularly what you see with teams, is how can a team break centrally? I think if Ryan Fredericks in the transition keeps his width a lot in this game, he will find space. And the commitment of Cameron John and the commitment of Halliday, they will press so high that it does give opportunities. If West Ham have a little bit of pace in those areas, we can of course carry the ball, and we might have to with some of the personnel that we play in this side. Centre back, I am going to go for. It's a tricky one. In my head, I kind of feel like. Oh, do you know what I'm going to do? I think they'll do this. I'm going to go Craig Dawson on the right-hand side. And again, I don't think this is a game that benefits his strengths, which of course is aerially and his strength and dealing with it. And I think it does pose questions of him. There's absolutely no doubt. And dealing with teams that commit men forward. I think if West Ham can get in that defensive shape quickly enough and aren't hit on a press, then I don't think this is too much of an issue. He's got enough protection. From what I've seen of him, particularly the adjustment of him and Ogbonna and West Ham as a back four, dealing with that spacing behind a little bit better, gives me a little bit more confidence. I think offensively, Craig Dawson at times could be absolutely crucial. You see the run he makes for the Stockport goal. Again, in this type of game, the inability to deal with second balls, the knockdowns, Craig Dawson's movement actually, in terms of set pieces, in the opposition box is very, very good. So it could be something to look out for, and I think possibly West Ham may call on him anyway. I could be completely wrong. He might play Balbuena and give Dawson a rest. But just from what I even see in the Stockport game, the fact that he kept the same centre-back pairing suggests to me that he's unlikely to change it. And I think if West Ham feel like this game isn't going to be too strenuous, which I think it is, then they'll play him. And I just think I think David Moyes will play him in this game. Left back, left hand side. Sorry, I'm absolutely shattered. Left hand side of the back four is Angelo Ogbonna. If we're going to go down that route of playing two senior first choice centre backs, it's positionally for me. I think what we've seen, particularly with Dawson and Ogbonna, I think one on one, more so Ogbonna, when he's beaten for pace, he's very cute. Of course, that comes with experience. Of course, he's an Italian. He has been an Italian international. I think that is the style and the way that most of these defenders are integrated into the game. But Ogbonna's shown that consistently over the Premier League, and I think particularly in the last 6 months or so, his form has been absolutely superb. So, I mean, it's going to be a test for him. There's absolutely no doubt. I think at times if Doncaster can get him behind and break those lines with inverted runs, then it's a question mark for him. Does he go and try and chase down the ball, win the press? If he doesn't, of course, naturally there's someone that's been, pushed into the box and there is an overload there, and maybe he doesn't get to it. I feel that given his intelligence in terms of dealing and his positioning, I think if he's going to go and try and win a ball that's beating him in the defensive line, he can go and do it. Honestly, I think he can go and do it. So I haven't got any concerns for both of them either. I think offensively, or aerially even, I don't think there's going to be the threat that we've seen, particularly from Premier League sides. We've just played West Brom and Burnley. Nothing of the sort for me. They could possibly throw in I think is it Anderson? Anderson from the centre-back for Doncaster, but I'm surmising he's a tall lad, possibly good from set pieces. I think West Ham from open play will be fine. The press, naturally, is an area that I would think if West Ham get caught in the number 9, got the pace. You've also got Taylor Richards as well, creating the auxiliary run. We'll look to press. That's something I would worry about. But I would think that David Moyes is going to employ Nobes in the pivot role. And I think we saw that against Stockport even. And I think this is exactly what he should do in this game and relieve a bit of that pressure on them at times if West Ham do have possession and try and break down a resolute Doncaster team. Left back, I think it'll be Ben Johnson. Again, I would like to switch the fullbacks. I think we've got good replacements and options in those areas. I think Johnson has proven himself this season when he's played. I think he's been great. I think obviously he's naturally a right back by trade, but he's played left wing back. He's played left back. He's good on the ball. Fantastic one-on-one. Again, I think he's not... I think offensively he's good. I think, the delivery's fine. He's not blistering pace. I think he can carry the ball. I think that's what I would ask of him in this game, to try and carry that ball forward and break Doncaster's press when they've got possession. And you fancy him, if he transitions with that ball quick enough and he finds space in terms of his delivery, I think he's got it in his locker. I think that's the mark of the player. I think that's the potential he's got. He's good with both feet. One-on-one positioning, I think he's fantastic. I think that's his strength. And I can't see, particularly from wide areas, Doncaster necessarily hurting us. I think a lot of the play will be central and they'll try and push the inverted runs to break the defensive line. But in wide areas, I don't think they're going to commit too many men there. Possibly Johnson's asked to narrow that back four, becomes a little bit central. But in terms of breaking on in that transition, he's got to come wide. He's got to use the width and he's got to exploit Doncaster and the spaces that they'll leave. And he's got the athleticism for this game. I think we're fortunate in the fact that both of our fullbacks have got the athleticism to really benefit West Ham in this game. So I would like to see Johnson. I would like to see Fredericks. Yeah, possibly with a high line they can get exploited, but even in terms of the counter-attack from Doncaster, they're going to try and counter through the middle. They make runs from deep as well if they're in a low block. I don't think there's going to be too much pressure when West Ham have the ball in Doncaster's half for Johnson to necessarily come back, because I don't think the wide areas are going to be exploited. That's not the way that Doncaster will play. So possibly there'll be an emphasis on him getting forward, getting deliveries into the box and looking for possibly whoever the front man may be to win the knockdown. Now, midfield, I think, again, we don't have enough options in midfield for me. I'd like to sit here and say, we'll play Coventry and we'll play Noble and we'll give Rice and Souček a rest. That's not going to happen for me. I think on the right-hand side, Nobes will play. I was much, much happier other than one-off press that Noble was sitting in a pivot role. Listen, his age, his athleticism isn't there. I don't think it helps his game. I think it pulls him out of position. I think it asks a lot of... and he will do it, Noble. I think, he's willing to go and make those runs, but he's not... Positionally, it will not suit West Ham. I think in this game, in a defensive shape, if we're sitting back, Nobes has got to try and really protect that back four on those runs from the inverted fullbacks. I think he can do that if he's got the discipline. And I know that sounds a little bit condescending because he is Noble and he's 33 and he's played for West Ham for God knows how many games. But just in terms of what I've seen before where he's gone to press and transition, I think Nobes' role in this game has to be the discipline. Possibly when West Ham look to press up the defence and that back line, I would like him to sit deeper. I think he can deal with some of those runs, particularly from the number 9, Taylor Richards as well, playing from deep. I think it will try and nullify them a little bit. I think it will give protection to Dawson and Ogbonna where they may be a little bit vulnerable. If West Ham want to introduce both the left back and the right back forward, and try and get deliveries into the box and create overloads. I'd like Noble to give those two centre-backs a little bit of protection. Rice can do it. We've seen him do it many a time. But for me, I think Rice's role in this game could be using that athleticism to break the lines, carry the ball, and be effective in terms of his distribution into the attacking midfield three and hurting Doncaster on the counter. Without further ado, of course, I believe Declan Rice will play. I would like to rest Thomas Souček. Even I rate Thomas Souček. I'd like to rest him. Declan Rice, for me, plays in the other pivot role. Listen, he's more than competent, isn't he? And I think he's young. He has played a lot of games. He's under a lot of pressure. He has been very consistent. I think the reason you play him rather than Souček, aside from the rest that you give to Thomas Souček, is his ability and his defensive awareness. This is a game that West Ham, if Doncaster do create a press on them, and they do have possession, that West Ham are going to have to be very astute in terms of when they're going to press and when they're going to sit. I think at times giving Noble the license to sit and Declan to press will be more effective, purely because I think if he can break the press, he's got the legs to get the ball and carry it and push West Ham forward. And I think even in central areas, the fact that Doncaster will commit the two defensive midfielders and play them almost like eights at the edge of the box and split them as well, means that if Declan can break their play and win the ball, there is a lot of space for him to run into. And if West Ham can commit bodies forward in both wide areas and centrally, we will create overloads in transition that Doncaster simply will not be able to deal with. So I think Declan is brilliant for this game. Again, listen, of course Thomas Souček can do it as well. I think defensively, he's shown that. I think he's a little bit more astute than I probably gave him credit for in the defensive sense. His athleticism is very good to win those loose balls and push West Ham further up the pitch. His strength is his additional runs into the box. And that is something that Moyes could try and incorporate later in the game if we're struggling to get a goal. If the low blocks become a bit suffocating and West Ham can't get a clear-cut opportunity, Souček's the guy to get an opportunity from a knockdown and try and get West Ham into this next round of the FA Cup. So I would like to rest Thomas Souček, and I believe we will. Could be proven wrong. Let's talk about the attacking midfield three. I think this is probably the most interesting point. I've seen people on social media. Does Benrahma start? Does he get, will you play him for a bit of confidence or just a bit of game time? I personally wouldn't play him from the beginning. I think he's an option definitely in terms of the second half and possibly the 60th minute onward. I think West Ham will employ some of the players that didn't start against West Brom. So I'm going to start with the left-hand side for starters. He's going to be Pablo Fornals for me. I think, we've seen Fornals in terms of his defensive work rate. He's fantastic in supporting Aaron Creswell, and it is more in those wider areas where possibly teams try and create the overlapping runs. You won't get this in the game. Of course, you'll get inverted runs. So I think Fornals' defensive work rate, positioning could be challenged. He's not, of course, a defensive player. To ask him to go and play and probably sit in alongside a Noble or a Rice is probably asking so much out of his remit that it possibly wouldn't be worth it. No doubt that he could do that role. No doubt that his press could break the play up. Transition, again, I just think Fornals doesn't have that natural pace to transition. A lot of the times he wins the ball and cuts back onto his right and tries to have a person playing in beyond him. The attacking midfield three, I think, you need a bit of pace, particularly on those counters. And Fornals, he's in that type of player. And this game, I don't think he's necessarily going to be played bad in. Of course, he offers endeavour, he offers work rate, he offers defensive responsibility. What could be a positive in terms of Fornals playing is his ability to press Doncaster. If you want to employ a high press, particularly when they're trying to play out from the back against those two centre-backs and the way that they try and commit men forward. If West Ham can try and win the ball higher areas, and particularly in that final third for Doncaster, when they've got possession and win those breakdowns, that's where Fornals will thrive. And I always feel like with Fornals, if you can get him into that final third, the quality of the final pass is there. If it's obvious and if there's space for him to play into. Again, of course, if it's in a low block, it's a little bit trickier, possibly takes a couple of touches, but that is only natural. I think that's where we want to employ him in this game. If we play a high press and we're trying to win that ball off Doncaster, who possibly try and split their two centre-backs and come out with the ball, that's where we'll get them. And then I think that's where, particularly down that left-hand side, you're coming up against Anderson. There is that opportunity there to go and win him if he's cumbersome in possession. So again, this isn't a slight on Fornals. I would like somebody else in this game, but certainly I think Fornals offers it in a pressing sense, and it could be to advantage of West Ham United. I think Manu plays in a 10 role, if I'm honest. There is, of course, an argument for Ben Rama, and I think naturally they both play in almost like a similar type of way. Lanzini's role in this game, I'm not sure how we're going to employ him, particularly in possession. Like, I feel like we're going to have a lot of space on the edge of that Doncaster box. They will concede so much room. So I think it's a question to Manu. What's your shots from distance like? Now, of course, you'll remember the Tottenham game. He put it in, and it was absolutely class. But I mean, I think in terms of a number 10 in this game, there's no space to potentially run into, particularly when West Ham are trying to get in beyond. There's a lot of space for you to keep possession of the ball. I think possibly it becomes frustrating. Possibly Manu is struggling in terms of what to do with the ball and how to be effective. But I think ultimately West Ham's benefit would be for someone like Manu to take shots from distance, to try and test their keeper, and possibly for the number 9 to commit themselves and win that second ball and possibly get something from there. I think I haven't seen the press isn't a natural part of Manu's play, but I feel like in that final third he's relieved a little bit of that responsibility. But of course, naturally, if West Ham want to commit that amount of men forward and Doncaster play out from the back, Manu will have space in the sort of central positions, particularly if the two defensive midfielders push up. And equally, like I say, in transition, he will have space. And of course, Manu Lanzini has that quality in the final third to find that final pass and create something or take a shot from distance. So he will get time in this game. He will get space in this game. My concern is he'll possibly become frustrated when they're playing that defensive shape and how difficult it is, and possibly the men that they'll try and flock back, even in transition, could put a lot of pressure on Manu to be decisive and clinical in either his shots or his passes in behind. But I am interested to see. It's going to be a tough game. It'll be a tough game. It'll be a tough game for SkyBet and Rama. I think this comes down to the quality on the edge of the box. And West Ham don't typically commit shots from the edge of the box. It's normally space in behind or deliveries, etc., etc. So this game isn't really built for that. But I do think he'll have space, and I think there will be questions asked of him in terms of how he uses the ball when he gets it. Right hand side. Again, I don't even know if I don't think I actually have this man in selection. I don't think I do actually, but I'll say it. Yarmolenko. I think Yarmolenko plays on the right hand side, cutting in on his left. Again, the way we employ the two attacking midfielders in the wide areas and using to cover the width, they won't be required as much in this game. The pressure won't be on them. Of course, it will be naturally in transition. I think Yarma does offer willingness in a press. I'm not saying he's necessarily lazy. I just think he lacks the athleticism. And he's not, in terms of defensive position and getting back and supporting his fullback, as good as Jarrod Bowen. Neither has he got the ability to go beyond the man as Jarrod Bowen does. Possibly in this game, if West Ham put a high press and Doncaster sit deep, this is the game where you introduce Yarmolenko's left foot from either a delivery or possibly from a shot from distance. I think that's where he'll thrive. Now, I'm not saying in transition he'll be able to carry the ball a long distance. And again, like I said, Doncaster will commit men back, of course, as they push the men forward. So Yarmolenko could be frustrating at times. We may be sitting here saying that Yarmolenko isn't beating that press, isn't being effective enough. But if West Ham have the ball in possession in Doncaster's final third, and they've got an inverted winger, essentially, in Yarmolenko with a fantastic left foot, I think that could clinch the game. It could hypothetically could clinch the game. But in terms of moments of quality that West Ham will need, I think Yarmolenko technically could offer it. And I have been massively critical of him in past weeks. And obviously, I think in a normal Premier League game that teams don't sit that deep and transitions are very, very important. You wouldn't play him. You play Jarrod Bowen, of course you would. And listen, if Bowen plays on the right hand side, cutting into his left, I think it'll benefit him as well. I think he's got quality in his left foot and in terms of finishing. But I think the fact that Yarmolenko can't really go in beyond the man, and he won't get really the opportunity to do that in this game, will actually benefit him. And again, even in wide areas, they'll force their wingers back. They'll ask questions of both their attacking midfielders in the way that West Ham do, and they'll ask them to come and play a defensive job and cover the width. And so Yarmolenko won't be really asked to create the width on that right hand side. He'll actually be asked to come in a little bit central. And I think he could get something. I'm talking hypothetical, because breaking a low block like that and wait to see it in a defensive shape is a really tough task for a lot of teams. So, but he has that little bit of magic on that left foot that I would hope that you can use in this game. Now for the forward man, I think personally, and I don't agree with it at all, I think Mikel Antonio plays. Now, we spoke about this on watch-alongs, we've spoken with Fans Voice, we've spoken about it with Dan. I would not play Michail Antonio in this game for max. I would play him for max 60 minutes. He needs a rest. We're playing Crystal Palace on Tuesday. I just would not commit that amount of minutes against Doncaster. If you're asking me in terms of a player that is built for a transition against Doncaster, it's him. And I think he'll have space in those central areas when the centre-back split. If we push up the attacking midfielders as well to try and win that ball as well and show a willingness to win it, he'll be the man that can get in behind and he will have space and he'll be asked, how clinical is your finishing? And then possibly, I think, if West Ham can get that early goal from someone like a Michail Antonio or possibly one of the attacking midfielders, I'm not saying I would take him off straight away, naturally, but I would take him off at half-time. There's no point in risking this guy. I think West Ham, the way we approach this game in general once we've got the goal, is going to be interesting to see if Moyes can control it. If he can control Doncaster at times, and again, it's a risk to give them possession, but do so in a way that can give rest to people like Michail Antonio. Would not play him for more than 60 minutes max. I think I would look to employ Bowen possibly in a number 9 if we wanted to do that. Again, we'd speak about also the defensive work rate as well. I can't really compare Bowen in terms of a hold-up striker because he isn't, but he has that defensive discipline. He will track back and he will try and win the ball, particularly if Doncaster have possession. So it could offer us an outlet there, particularly in the latter stages of the game. But I certainly would not play Michail Antonio for more than 60 minutes. Let me know in the comment section actually what you think about the Mickey thing. I think most of us are in agreement to not run him into the ground, particularly with the run of fixtures coming up. I think this just underlines why it's so important to have another striker. I know Odebeck, I think he had COVID. Possibly the rumour was COVID for the West Brom game. If he was fit, which I don't think he will be, you'd play him. I would play him from the start, to be fair. I think, why not? I think West Ham have enough quality. I think what will gear West Ham out of those tricky positions, if Mickey doesn't score and we have to take him off in 60 minutes and we're sitting there saying we're not playing with a striker, it's set pieces. I think West Ham will put a press on. If we can win the second balls, we commit men forward. I think even if you can commit a Declan Rice forward, you bring on Thomas Souček for possibly a Mark Noble at the latter stages of the game. Aaron Creswell at left back, if you're looking for decent delivery into the box, we will get something 100%. The way West Ham play offensively from set pieces, we're very, very effective. And I think that's something for us to bear in mind once we get to the 60th minute if we can't break down Doncaster and get it done. I mean, yeah, it's a tough one. I've really sort of chewed the fat on this one, but it's such an interesting matchup. And obviously, I think if we played our first team, it would be much easier for West Ham and possibly we'd get the job done a little bit earlier. I'm concerned that this thing could drag. If particularly Doncaster come out of the traps quite quickly early on and put West Ham under a bit of pressure and we can see, then it becomes a different game. And possibly they sort of sit in that low block and make it hard for us. In terms of a score prediction, I am going to go for West Ham 2-1. I think that we'll get a goal from a set piece. I think it'll probably be Angelo Ogbonna if he plays, or Craig Dawson. I can see it in that type of mould. I can also see a Jarrod Bowen possibly on transition. He's brought on late. I don't think he'll start, but him getting a goal as well. I think Doncaster will get a goal. It could be that West Ham are trying to press them and they beat the press and they've got them to commit the men forward, the number 9, as I said, the 17. In fact, they'll put the inverted wingers, the overloads. It'll either come from that and West Ham trying to go and finish the game, or possibly the first 10 if West Ham aren't attuned to the way that they're going to play and possibly feel like they can press them as a team and they get the opportunity and they can get in behind and they create overloads and we just caught out of position. Or maybe it's the latter stages of the game, we switch off, they score. I think they'll get a goal, unfortunately. I'd like to sit here and say I think West Ham can shut it out, but I think they'll get something. But I think West Ham will get through into the next round. So with that said, it's been a late one. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the West Ham Way if you're new. Of course, the watch along will be out tomorrow at 2:30. Join the lads then for the lineup, build up, and all the live match commentary. You get your post-match reaction as well. And then we'll, of course, roll on to the Crystal Palace game. You'll get another predicted 11 out very, very shortly. So until then,